Another topic that caught my eye this week was the National Education Union saying that schools should teach social justice and black history across the whole UK national curriculum. In doing so, they say it would stop incidents like the one with Child Q, the black schoolgirl who was wrongly strip-searched earlier this year, from happening again. So do we need a more diverse curriculum? Here to discuss this issue, I'm joined by social policy analyst Dr. Rahib Ehsan and Elliot Reid, the founder of blackhistory.school. Rahib, thank you for your company. Do we need a more diverse curriculum? Is this going to stop incidents like Child Q, for example, from actually happening?
I think that in modern day Britain it's very important that our schools act as intergroup hubs of cultural exchange. I think that is very important. But ultimately, when it comes to British education, I want to see more of a focus on hard skills. I think that our maths, literacy, and all the rest of it, I think we need to focus on improving those standards. Now, of course, you want schools to be hubs of inclusive learning, and you want students to be able to develop their knowledge in a safe manner. My issue is more that I don't want what I would consider to be contested theories to be presented as fact in our classrooms. And we have seen politicians suggest that is taking place in schools within England in particular. So I think that the discussion is, how do we create schools which ultimately helped pupils from different backgrounds develop those bonds of social trust and mutual respect without presenting theories as fact, which could potentially be divisive within those schools.
Elliot, you've heard what Rahib had to say there. In my view, right, there should be no such thing as LGBT history, black history or women's history on the curriculum. To me, and I'm sure to many viewers watching, there is one thing and one thing only, and that's British and world history, right? That's there for all of us, no matter what our skin colour or sexuality, and we should teach that, should we not?
I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding of the argument of what's being put forward. As you said, black history is British history. When we look at the ethnic makeup of the UK, 75% of those ethnic minorities are from the descendants of British subjects. Now, I've done a little bit of my own research and I've looked at the past papers that have been presented by AQA and Edexcel, and despite the national curriculum stating that it is important to understand the individuals and the makeup of individuals who have created life in Britain as we know it, despite them saying it's important to teach that, there's absolutely no concrete matter in teaching children as to how the descendants of British subjects have created Britain as we know it today. And that's an issue, because when it comes to children's psychology, it's been documented ever since the early psychologists such as Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, that children or people need a hero story to step into. They need to be able to see the reflection of themselves in the development of society. It's very, very difficult to talk about an empire which ruled 25% of the Earth's people and not mention India, Jamaica, Hong Kong, the Americas to another degree. It's children are being robbed of a much better education which explores economic contributions, ethical, moral contributions which have created Britain as we know it today. So yes, 100% black history should be taught.
Right, I've heard what you've got to say. Elliot, do you not agree with Rahib, though, that actually the curriculum is swelling like you wouldn't believe, right? When actually kids need to be taught the basic things, right? They're leaving school without proficient English and the math skills that they need to go out there into the workplace. Are you worried that we're piling too much on to the curriculum?
No, because they teach history anyway, so you just fit it into the history curriculum. You're not talking about adding another subject. You're just talking about fitting it into the existing curriculum.
The NEU aren't the only union to actually ask for this, though. Earlier this month, the National Association of Schoolmasters Union of Women Teachers said they want to decolonise the classroom and teach pupils about black people's contribution to Britain in all its subjects, from maths to even food technology. I mean, to me, Rahib, this is all just going a bit mental, right? And we heard from the likes of Miriam Cates MP, saying that actually kids are being told that they can transition behind their parents' backs. And I imagine most viewers watching this are just saying, just get this activism out of schools. Yes, teach British history, and I agree with much of what Elliot had to say there. But all of this stuff added on to the curriculum, it's just too much.
I think one point that I do agree with Elliot, and I think this is actually a way that you can boost social cohesion in modern day Britain. Take, for example, how we teach the Second World War. I think there's definitely more space to discuss the contribution made by Asian, African and Caribbean soldiers towards the broader Allied effort to defeat Nazism. And I think that's something that shouldn't only be taught in inner city schools. I think that should be taught in schools across Britain, whether it's rural villages or inner city London or Birmingham. I think that the point I'd make to Elliot is that something has to give, and ultimately there has to be a broader discussion in terms of what should be prioritised in our curriculum. And I think that's something that we should have that conversation. I think things like the proposal that I've just provided, I don't want to see people, the sort of anti-war activists say, oh, this is too militaristic. I think it's important that Britain acknowledges the contribution made by members of the British Indian Army, soldiers from the Caribbean, the East African Rifles. I think those contributions, we should talk about them a lot more. And I think also it should be taught within our history lessons in schools. But we have to be aware of the risk of social activism. The main point that I would make is that we cannot compromise the development of hard skills, which will ultimately provide children with the basics as they enter adulthood and further down the line, the labour market.
Elliot?
You'd like me to comment on what you said, Darren?
I would like you to comment on what Rakib's just said, if that's okay.
I'd agree with Rakib. But once again, you're not going to detract from hard skills by just filling the history curriculum with more useful information and more useful content. On the national curriculum website, they have already expressed the need for children to learn about empire and for children to learn about the multi-ethnic or multi-group contributions to the UK. The issue is that because, say, examining boards like Edexcel, AQA, which the teachers already incredibly stressed. By the way, at least I think 30% of teachers want to currently leave the industry because of the amount of stress. So they need content which they are going to be able to seamlessly teach the children to satisfy the exam boards, and the exam boards also need to satisfy the national curriculum. On my research, I looked through about 100 past papers for GCSE history, and there was only one question out of 100 past papers which alluded to empire, and even that was pretty borderline propagandish. It didn't really satisfy anything from a true historical objective nature.
Right, but Elliot, you were shaking your head when I mentioned getting activism out of schools. Why do you disagree with that sentiment?
No, I wasn't. There was a lot that I was shaking my head at, Darren. I think it's just that you were trying to put a lot into one sentence, and you tried to put Black history with LGBTQ history with women's rights, and I think in your mind you see it as...
I do view it as separate identity boxes, trying to get as much into the curriculum as possible, when actually just teach British history. That's all I'm asking for, Elliot.
Okay, well, we agree on that, but then you have to also understand that, Darren, there have been gay people, Black people, Indian people who are also contributed to British history. It's
right, absolutely. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Rakib, you can come in there.
I think that we have to, maintain focus on what we're actually discussing. For example, I think there's no place for radical transgenderism in British schools. That's something that I'm totally against. I think the discussion we're having is about what is the current content and substance of our curriculum, and how can our curriculum actually provide a more wholesome educational experience, which also helps to boost social cohesion in modern day Britain. And I think that's certainly achievable. But I draw the line, for example, if we have critical race theories being presented as fact, ultimately presenting non-white Brits as some kind of oppressed collective in British society, I actually think that would be incredibly demotivating for some ethnic minority peoples in Britain. I think what's much better is, and Elliot will probably agree with me on this, for example, the Black Caribbean contribution to post-World War to Reconstruction in the UK. I think that's something that could be factored into our history lessons.
Right, men, we're going to have to leave it there. I could continue this debate and go on for hours, no doubt, but that was the social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ehsan and Elliot Reid, founder of Black History School. Thanks for speaking to me on Real Britain today. There's plenty more to come.